Boom! My name is Hanko Simon. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. It's been an eventful week. First thing, of course, is now COVID-19 is once again monetizable. Not that I really cared about it much before, but still nice to know. So we can talk about it again and not get yellow money signed about it. For some reason, the name thing on that thing every week, it shows up differently in the comments, like a different color, and I'm just realizing right now I cannot read any of the names on the screen. I can see them over here in the chat comments on the side here. So anyway, I still like to capture them. You can still see the comments pretty well. It's good to see so many people here in the chat already. Another thing, I actually came set up with the keyboard and everything. I'm actually figuring out, I did a live stream last night on Tokyo Digital Crew, which was actually quite a lot of fun. I've been figuring out how to do sort of live loops, like record little loops and play them, which lets you build up tracks, which actually is a pretty good way. It's a bit like what I was doing on the Korg, where I could just generate random beats and tunes and so on and play tracks, and it was working kind of well. I've still got to get the hang of it a bit better, but if we've got time at the end I might do that. However, there is a bit to cover this week. As with most weeks, what I'm going to try to do is, while I'll give you the updates on COVID-19, I'm certainly not going to talk the whole show about it, because I don't want to. There's enough good information out there. I don't want to add to that other than to point out the information that is sort of confirmed and where to go and get the right information. I don't have any expert knowledge or anything to contribute. There has been a lot of other news going on this week around Tokyo, which yeah, I'm kind of happy I'll be able to feature. So we'll go through some other news stories as well, and just keep up with what's going on with life in Tokyo. And these are interesting times, of course, not just here, but everywhere else. I hope that everybody out there is safe and keeping well. It is pretty much the same situation worldwide in different degrees at the moment. So first of all, in the chat, I see that Give Me a Break Man. Welcome. Good to have you here. I know you can't stay around for very long, but yeah, it's kind of funny. We've both gotten into our life routines, which have been changed. So perhaps, I see Radri. Maybe Radri's not that familiar with this show, but yeah, it was always kind of tough doing shows Saturdays and Sundays. But I would like to actually do a show, once again with Victor. Once in a while, doing two full things a week is too much for me. I can't do anything. I can't watch Netflix if that happens. I can't actually spend any personal time. But yeah, actually it's been a long time, and it would be good to have a catch up, and we could use this format actually. I think if we got this is off the mobile phone right here that you're looking at right now, so I think if we got him on Skype, I could probably hook in the sound, and we could probably actually do the video with like a sort of video interview and have the comments on the side, and I think it would work pretty well. So excellent to have you here, Victor. It would be awesome to do a show actually sometime, maybe on a weeknight. That'd be good. In terms of the comments, we've got who else we got here? We've got Diggins, Konto, good to see you. Tokyo Tonight, we've got Radri, good to see you. And by the way, shout out, and actually, you know what, I have to retweet it, but Radri is going to be, he asked me to join on Why Come Japan tomorrow night to talk about COVID-19. I don't actually, he asked for my view, so I'll give it just in terms of the information, in terms of how the law works around the declaration, the emergency declaration that we're waiting for now. Of course, the latest information today, 143 confirmed cases today, probably more by this evening, so it is clearly spiking, and clearly we are on the brink of an emergency declaration such as that is in Japan. I'll explain a little bit on tonight's show, as well as in more detail, probably on Radri's show tomorrow night, so make sure you subscribe to Radri. He's got a good channel. He's been going around actually more diligently than Victor and I. Victor and I very randomly sort of went around and covered a lot of the community, including Radri on our 2.5 Voyages show, but he's actually gone around and really systematically covered a lot of people, so actually he's doing the best job of keeping up with the community right now, and I'd highly recommend subscribing to Radri and checking out Why Come Japan, not least of which because you'll see me tomorrow night, and who wouldn't want to see me 2 or 3 or 4 nights a week? I sure know some people who don't, but that is what that is. But still, it would be good to talk to you tomorrow night. Subscribe to Radri and check that out. We have interesting times indeed against Konto. I'm just reading the old comments now, catching up. We've got the Sergeant Bilko. Boom, good to see you. Welcome. We've got Quint Rankid, welcome back. The Red Value from Nara, I believe, but you got to Nagoya, recorded a live show the other night with Give Me a Break, man. Good to have you there in the comments. Tokyo 503, yes, let's get this show and the state of emergency on the road. Indeed, Tokyo 503, good to have you. If you are here watching, say hello in the comments. I like to say hello to people who are watching. Don't be shy, especially it's cool when you see a name who doesn't drop a comment very often. But who else we got in here? We've got Accent, long time no see. Accent, good to see you. You're in, are you in Tassie? You're in Australia, right? But anyway, good to see you, man. Long time no see. The J-Vlog, salutations. We've got King and Kodos. Oh no, how late am I? You're not late at all. We're still doing introductions, so you are perfectly on time. Perk, good to see you. Who else we got in here? Jeremiah Kedner. Well, a name. Now I'm just thinking, have I seen that name before? I wouldn't want to say it's the first time when it wasn't, but very good to see you there in the comments, and thanks for saying hello. We've got Shubas, never fear. Buenos dias in Panama. Good to have our Central American representative Shubas in the comments. We've got Barringer, excellent to see you. The Red Value, do a backflip. I will not do a backflip, but thank you for asking. By the way, I'm in the right clothes for it. I'm in my Sunwolves rugby jersey, which unfortunately, because of the whole virus situation, they're supposed to be having their final season right now, but it looks like they will not be having a final season at all, which is a great shame. I am going to... I've got to figure out what to do about this keyframes error over here, but yes indeed. Who else is in here? We've got 32 people viewing. I do love to see the names of the people who are in here, so please say hello. Erin, hey, good to see you, Erin. Nice to have you there in the comments. You're in Saitama. So, oh, I'm sorry, you're in Saitama. Okay, well, good. Yes, indeed, and stay safe. Saitama has a surprisingly low number of cases for being so close to Tokyo, so good job there in Saitama. I've got Savas, musician, drinking a Riesling wine while listening. Love all my Twitter posts. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the Twitter posts. People tell me that the more Riesling that you drink, the better the show gets. So please get into it. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with yes, the comment being the content being mundane. But I'm glad that you are enjoying a Riesling, and I am enjoying talking to you. So good to have you, Savas, musician. We've got Will from the UK. Good to see you, sir. Probably a sir. I'm probably not being gender inappropriate. Not that I can't even keep up with all the genders nowadays. All the genders. Welcome, Will from the UK. Good to see you. Hope you're staying safe over there. Who else we got? We got Limit. Now, should I say Limitic or Limitic? But hello from Morocco. I'm not sure I've actually had knowingly a Morocco commenter before, so actually that is awesome. Excellent to have you in here. Father of Man, 25. Do I expect an emergency declaration tomorrow? Yeah, I think the numbers this weekend have gotten so crazy. Tomorrow is funny. Mondays the spike goes down because apparently they do fewer tests on Sunday. So there's always a dip on Monday. And then there was like the surge on Tuesday, but I think given that we've had 2 days over 100 cases and the way that the line is going and no one knows how they got it, we'll get to that. But yes, I'm pretty sure, Father of Man 25, we are probably going to have a declaration of an emergency declaration probably tomorrow, which is more just a statement of the obvious at that point. Simon, good to see Simon. Good to see you, Sock Simon. Wow, great to see so many commenters by the way of names, handle names that I'm not so familiar with. So it's excellent to see all of you guys, and welcome, guys and girls, of course. We've got regular Andrew Mulboy. Excellent to see you. Thank you again for the links. Late in Melbourne, but appreciate you joining. As always, good to see you. We've got YTP PJ 64. Good to see you. Been years since you've watched streaming. Kind of missed them, huh? I'm trying to think. Is that YouTube PJ? Is that PJ? Kansai PJ or a different PJ? But in any case, good to have you there in the comments. Welcome, always welcome, I guess. Now that we're all kind of locked down, perhaps that's helping the situation. But in terms of people coming in and watching, but yes, indeed. Jeremiah is looking forward to sharing a mask with the family of 4, the 2 masks. Well, that's right. There's various ways you can tackle that, of course. We will get to that. Yes, indeed, good to see everybody. It looks like we're up to speed. Great to see so many commenters here. Great to see Victor and everyone joining in the comments. We're about to get into the topics, but remember, at any time, if you want to say hello, if you want to actually ask me a question or ask me to talk about something, that's what I'm here for. Just at Mark Hiko Simon, it will flash orange over there in the comments that I'm looking at, and I will pay attention to it, and that's what I'm here for. That's why I love to do it interactive. So yes, welcome, and feel free to say hello and to drop me comments and questions. Kay and Kodos in the countryside in Tochigi, life is normal. I'm glad it's still pretty good there. Slick RX, good to see him. There's another handle name. Good to see one that's not so often seen there. So used to watch me. Give me a breakdown of it 10 years ago. Coming to Japan. Since not watching you both, and glad I didn't move. Surprised to see. Not quite sure how to take that. Well, 2.5 voyages. Went for a long time actually, and who knows, we might start it again. But what's the most embarrassing thing about New Zealand? What's the most embarrassing thing? I don't know. I guess it's kind of embarrassing. The main embarrassing thing about New Zealand is just like being among other New Zealanders from there and constantly realizing how much you all know each other. It's hard to explain, but you talk to any Kiwi and it's that moment of dread where when you've got to talk to them, you can figure out with about 3 questions, either if you know them or you know someone in common. And when you do that and you realize, oh my God, I've got no privacy with this person, it's kind of, maybe embarrassing isn't the right word, it's just awkward. And it means that every childhood embarrassing moment that you have, you cannot escape from if you know another New Zealander, because someone knows all the embarrassing things that have ever happened to you. And that's the burden of being from a small country. So yes, I was very much like Tasmania. So yes, anyway, let's get into the topics. It's great having all the interaction before the show. Lysander 45, great to see you. Indeed, stay safe in Beijing. Sounds like, right now China's like what everyone's looking to as the model of doing well, at least in terms of recovery. Tech Art too, good to see you by the way as well. I'm not going to go near some of those comments right now. Let's jump into it. So yes, first of all, that is a love hotel. Although it makes for a nice photo. I actually had to run into work to go and do some emergency stuff. Only for one day. It was nice to go in, however, and the area where I was, there's lots of cherry blossoms out. They're still out right now. It is beautiful in Tokyo right now. And the weather, although we had snow about a week ago in Tokyo, it's generally been like the low 20s. It's actually like perfect. It's actually the best time of year. And there's like a magical castle with rotating beds from what I hear. Anyway, it's kind of an old one. This one is famous, but it's like from the 80s. And in Japan, if you know Japan, like I actually noticed when I was walking past it, there's actually a big poster on the side of the building saying, open new renewal 2002. It's like they got an 18-year-old new renewal building size poster on the other side. So it's probably pretty grungy inside, but still, that looks kind of nice, and that was a good photo. And other stuff on what's going on in Japan. Yes, there are, again, there was an increase of foreign workers in Japan. I don't think I count as a foreign worker because I'm a permanent resident, but 13.6% increase in non-Japanese workers from 2018. Particularly right now, the top 2 countries, China and Vietnam. When I came to Japan in 1999, it was Korean, Chinese, Brazilian, Filipino, and Vietnamese weren't even like on the graph, and now they are. Like, check it out. 25% of all the foreign, if you say Gaijin, 25% of the time they're Chinese, and 24.2%. Probably in the next year, Vietnamese are going to overtake Chinese as the biggest group of foreigners in Japan, and they weren't a significant group at all when I got here. That is really significant, followed by 10% Filipinos, 8% Brazilians, and Nepalese as well, and Indonesians increasing a lot. So, they've got the numbers on the side here. So here's the thing: in all of Japan, there's like less than 2,000 New Zealanders. I think was the number that I heard. I don't actually know what the number is from here, but you can see. America, Britain, when we think of, often when you're English speaking, you think of Gaijins as people like yourself, and we don't make the list. Here we go, in order. It's China, including Hong Kong, Vietnam, Philippines, Brazil, Nepal, South Korea, way down the list now, South Korea, Indonesia, and Peru. This is what it means to really be foreign and working in Japan right now. And a lot of manufacturing and so on, and a lot of these apprenticeship visas have been a major spur for this. I wouldn't recommend to anyone to come on an apprenticeship visa because they are abused quite often as basically low-wage labor, manual labor for a lot of jobs. They don't have the number for Aussies on here. I could probably check it, but I'm not sure. But the number's in the low thousands anyway. And which is funny when you consider that Australia has its own. As Bondi Beach is for Kiwis in Australia, there's Niseko and Hokkaido. So there are towns here that are basically entirely Australian. But in spite of those concentrations, we don't even rank. So yeah. I think I saw a comment. His more NZ than AU. Are we talking about accents? Yeah, I think well, it's kind of funny. I'm deciding if that's about accents. I'm not sure. It might not be, but I get disowned back in New Zealand as well. People think that I am South African. Now it's just flattened out a little bit too much. But yeah, I pretty much, when I'm in Australia, I go back to twanging. My mum is Australian. I grew up in Australia. I actually learned how to speak in Australia, but you know, I lived most of my childhood in New Zealand. So, although I could be responding to something that was not even mentioned, so there we go. Bondi and Manly beaches are closed due to, I've heard that they've been really policing the beaches in Australia. So yeah, here's a thing which came up. This is not due specifically because of virus measures, but NHK was explaining earlier in the week that partly is mainly due to the cutting of flights and transport links from basically this Wednesday. Japan postage connections between Japan and 153 countries, not including America and Britain yet, but 153 countries of the world. There's no post anymore. You cannot post things from one country to another. So you talk about the sakoku, the cutting off and isolation of Japan. It's hitting at the moment, and this is a side effect. So yeah, that was kind of alarming. Again, I'm trying to cover stories that are not purely related to COVID-19 that I find they're interesting and that are going on. This one kind of slipped under the radar, but I think I've mentioned it before. America has decided that they have this wonderful large military, which they have all around the world. That they, defense is a huge, cost for American taxpayers. So, the current president, a businessman, thought, hey, we're basically offering free protection to all of these countries, and we're paying all this money. Why don't we make them pay for it? We're going to build military bases and make the locals pay for it. Now, Japan and South Korea pay among the highest in the world for base fees. We actually pay the salaries of staff, and we actually give them the land. When I say we, I mean I'm a permanent resident here. Japan contributes a huge chunk of the costs of hosting the US forces, which technically are an extension of the occupation from the end of World War II, although now less to occupy Japan, they're more here actually as a forward projection of US forces in this region to basically allow them to move very quickly if something were to happen to South Korea or Taiwan or other sort of hotspots in the region which could destabilize the economy here, which would have a very big knock-on effect for America. So America has the bases that they have in Asia to protect their own interests in this part of the world. American trade and its economy is hugely dependent on this part of the world. However, at the same time, they also do point out when they justify the basis that they are here for protection as well. And they decided that although Japan pays something like 25%, I think was the number, and South Korea pays, I think, the same or even more already, Trump decided to set a goal of let's see how much we can get them to pay. So when the current status of forces arrangement with South Korea was due to expire earlier this week, they decided from last year that they were going to start demanding that South Korea pay twice as much as they were paying before for the privilege of having huge military bases in South Korea. South Korean government said, hey, we already pay you guys an awful lot. And then basically the Americans started walking around the room tipping over China for just saying, it's a beautiful country you have here, wouldn't it be terrible if something were to happen to it? And they threatened to fire every Korean national employee who works on those bases, or to furlough them, to basically put them in hold. They couldn't come to agreement, and America did it. They fired every Korean who works on these bases. Often when you hear about Americans talking about the justifications for the bases in Okinawa and around Tokyo, they point out the economic benefit to the local communities of this, which is true and it's not insignificant. But South Korea and Japan are modern countries, and although they do employ a lot of people, thousands of people in the case of Korea, and now because of this dispute they're unemployed. Basically what it amounts to is that the U.S. has kind of gone from being a military service that defends America's interests around the world to being kind of mercenary, right? They're basically going around demanding protection for protection money for being able to go and do this. And in the case of Korea, they've actually gone and pulled the trigger with a key ally, and this is and they're basically threatening and taking it out by they're retaliating against South Korea for not increasing the protection payments by actually firing and really affecting the lives of all the workers who support those US bases. So I don't know, they're basically trashing their strategic position in this part of the world, which granted is South Korea and Japan do benefit from. But at the same time, I mean, for example, when Japan said that, you know, there are too many bases on Okinawa, we'd really like you to move one of the bases to Guam. So they asked America to move a base. When Hatoyama asked America to do that a few years ago, America lost its mind over that. You know, same when President Roe of South Korea asked to move or reduce U.S. base presence. The U.S. threatened to pull out. They completely freaked out about it. So, you know, this is not just purely, you know, at the pleasure of these local countries, but they are basically extorting them. And again, it just kind of shows, I mean, America, they're doing, I guess they can do this quietly. They're not drawing a lot of attention right now because of everything else going on, but it's very disappointing that the US has basically fallen from being kind of a world sort of superpower that sort of, you know, whose presence maintains security, to seeking to basically just cash in by becoming sort of an extortionist with its bases. It's disappointing. Anyway, that's what's happening in Korea, and that could very well happen in Japan very soon, so that is interesting. Why did I save this one? I don't know. Hang on a sec. And that's the Akita Dog Online. I don't know why I saved this, so I'm just going to skip to the next one. Right now, of course, US warning that with travel now rapidly closing up between countries, a lot of people basically looking to leave early or to extend their visas because they want to stay. And the result of this is, in spite of all the social distancing warnings going out at the moment, Tokyo immigration was packed with people all clustered closely together in queues the other day. So although ostensibly the reason that the government's kind of drawing things out and not imposing, you know, immediate draconian measures is partly to allow you know, planning and organized and orderly transition into the kind of enhanced lockdown that we're likely heading for. You know, it's clearly not that well organized, and that was a side effect of that. JICA pointing out, so when I mentioned how so many of the new workers in Japan are Vietnamese, and a lot of them are coming in on the apprenticeship visas, what's been happening on these visas, and I've talked about it here on the show multiple times. Mr. Gordy Chip, I see lots of people leaving comments that are triggering the held for review, particularly Give Me a Flake Man, and I have to manually approve those. So if you're not seeing your comments, Victor, it's because that's happening. I am approving them, but I can't stop the show every time you say something that triggers YouTube. So yes, anyway, I am doing that. So yeah, as we've talked about on the show, the reason you do not want to come to Japan on an apprenticeship visa is what has been happening is a lot of farms have been withholding pay from these people. They've been confiscating their passports. They've been imprisoning and basically using these people quite often as slave labor. Same in factories. They're supposed to be coming here to learn particular skills to take back to their home countries to foster international cooperation. And what is happening instead is basically a lot of small companies and rural sort of farms and so on that basically can't afford to stay in business paying Japanese people Japanese wages. They are using this foreign apprenticeship system as a way of just getting cheap, low skill wages, and they're basically treating them as indentured labor. There have been a whole bunch of documented cases of serious abuse of this, including cases where the apprentices retaliated and murdered their employers and whatnot. So Japan's international reputation really has been seriously tarnished by the scheme, and you know, JICA has been trying to point out to the Ministry of Justice and the various the foreign ministries that have been promoting this, that Japan has to do something to try to improve things because it's affecting Japan's international reputation. Nothing's been working, but so JICA has attempted to poke where it hurts most by saying, you know, we've been surveying people and they think that the conditions of the apprenticeship visa scheme are much, much better in South Korea than they are in Japan, which I suppose is a good way to get attention. Yes, indeed, that is a thing. That is a thing that happened. What else? We've got within Tokyo, the number of infections have been spreading. They released the first numbers the other day, which were by ward, by the 23 wards of Tokyo, which have the highest numbers. You would have expected that Shinjuku, with the night districts, with Kabukicho, with the going out and everything, would have been. I heard Michael Kuchek, who I enjoy following, and if you like following Japan news, you should all absolutely follow as well. He describes Shinjuku as the Mos Eisley of Tokyo, and it's probably a good way. It's a good description for it. Raz Al Ghul, good to see you there. He described it well, and he's sort of saying it's surprising that there aren't more cases in Shinjuku when it's like the Mos Eisley of Tokyo. But of course, what's happening is all the people who live in the residential districts like Setagaya, which had the highest number, all going to Shinjuku and doing things they should and shouldn't do, and they're taking them home to the residential areas which are having the higher numbers. But that is a thing that is happening in Tokyo right now. Another thing you might not have noticed this week was that the phased-in smoking ban, the indoor smoking ban, unless it's a fully isolated, fully dedicated area, that came into effect this week. This is actually a great example of how laws work in Japan. And when we talk about the emergency declaration and why it's taking so long to come out in Japan, one thing that often happens with a lot of laws in Japan is that people the government will work to basically get voluntary cooperation and will not introduce penalties or not dump it on people until everybody has actually had time to prepare properly and become compliant. And although that sounds like, oh, they're just being soft and cronyism and they're letting people off the hook, this is what happens. They actually say, with smoking in particular, remember the Japanese government owned a majority stake in Japan Tobacco. It's a government-run monopoly, and the revenues from selling tobacco, not taxes on tobacco, from the tobacco itself, the money from selling cigarettes through its ownership of Japan Tobacco was actually directly going into, it was actually a revenue stream for the Ministry of Finance, better than many tax streams, which is why when the Ministry of Health discovered that cigarettes, when it became established science that cigarettes give you cancer, and the Ministry of Health tried to take measures to restrict smoking, the Ministry of Finance blocked them and vetoed them from doing so because it would have negative impacts on Japanese government revenue. It's taken them a long time for the Ministry of Health wanting people not to get cancer and the Ministry of Finance wanting people to pay extra money to them through addiction to finally resolve this, that they started having these voluntary, very watered down sort of measures to start to curb smoking behavior from about 10 years ago, and it's taken really 10 years to go from first having separate like smoke-free areas or ventilated areas where people have to go and smoke where you couldn't. I mean, again, it was just on the end in the 90s when I first got here that people could still smoke at work. People would smoke on the bullet trains. They would, it was hard to avoid smoke everywhere. And it's really been a really gradual process, and it's kind of the society's kind of changed now where, you very seldom see smoking. It depends on where you are, of course, but around Tokyo you don't see it as much anymore, where now that they're bringing in and they're making it so that the indoor smoking is banned, except in dedicated, like fixed, isolated areas. Like you can't just have a partitioned area anymore. And with penalties and whatnot. Everyone's already been compliant for a few years, so on the one hand it could be seen as soft, but it is quite effective if people are able to adapt and make the investments in construction of the restaurants and ventilators and what do you call it, filters and stuff like that, to be able to, air purifiers, to be able to handle it. And it's worked kind of well. It is a very Japanese way of doing it, though. It's a very, step by step, carefully, you get a good end result, but, when urgency is required, which one might argue for, the national lung cancer rates, it arguably was urgent, and they didn't react urgently enough. Certainly the case now. You could say, on the other hand, that the measures do generally work well because people voluntarily cooperate. If you are Australian, thank you, Victor. Thank you for reminding. Hey, Wingstar, good to see you. Remember, if you are if you're watching, if you like, remember to like. Yes, this is what I consider to be the only drinkable beer in Australia. My mum moved from Victoria. That's Victoria Bitter. My mum moved to Queensland. They have 4X in Queensland. 4X is undrinkable. And I'm not a beer fan. I just classify beer between drinkable and non-drinkable. Asahi, which is great beer, has taken over Victoria Bitter, or Carlton Breweries, I believe. Is it Foster's Breweries? Anyway, they took over whoever owns VB. So now, like pretty much every other bureau in Australia, they've been acquired. Basically, they're beneficially owned by Japanese companies now, which I'm sure would temporarily cause outrage in Australia if it weren't for the fact everyone's distracted by the other news. But that's another thing that happened this week. See, there's lots of things going on apart from just the disease thing. Yeah, now this is another thing. A lot of companies still struggling. We talked about the voluntary cooperation before mandatory cooperation, and but what's been going on. They've had voluntary cooperation where they've been asking people to go and, companies, as much as possible to make everybody work from home, to see if they could sort of reduce the number of people going to work. And it's had some benefit. It's had some companies have switched over, some haven't. But even a lot of companies that have switched to working from home that are not used to it. So there's a lot of people who do jobs where they can work remotely via computer or whatever. And, some companies are figuring out how to make that happen. However, even when that's happening, there's a case here of a 30-year-old woman. There's a story in the Mainichi Shimbun who is forced to go into work once a week to have her expense receipts personally Hanko stamped by her boss as approval. So, this is a thing with Japan. The old Hanko, the contract seal, and this has been used since the sort of Edo period in Japan. It's really deeply ingrained in the culture that if you want to signify approval or binding or agreement, and it happens with contracts, which I deal with a lot as well. You can of course sign them. You can even electrically, digitally sign. There's all sorts of technologies you can do that. You can totally avoid having to physically touch even the paper to be able to do contracts or approvals nowadays. But in Japan, businesses are structured, been structured for hundreds of years around the idea that it's not official and it's not binding or legal unless, boom, they have a seal, a physical stamp. And then the thing is that stamp is binding, but it doesn't have to actually be stamped by the president. So long as there's a governance mechanism to make sure it's not used inappropriately, if that is on an agreement, that's the company's, sort of way. And typically, the stamps are done by people other than the actual people. Although when it's a personal stamp and it's like an approval notice, like for example with these receipts, it often is the person giving the approval. But if it's like a contract, often contracts are not sealed by the people whose name it's done in. But this is the problem, and this is the reason I had to go and take that photo of the Love Hotel by the river with all the cherry blossoms, is because I had to go in and stamp contracts. 99% of the contracts that I deal with or it can be digitally signed, but in Japan there are certain types of contracts. For example, if you do an ukiyo contract, a contract for a deliverable, you actually have to put duty stamps physically on the contract. And if you do like a real estate agreement, those still require physical seals in most cases. So it's crazy, the system here, although the government recognizes it's a bad thing and they're planning to start promoting digital signature and seals from next year. At the moment it's proving to be an inhibition, and it's the reason I sometimes still have to go into work. I'm hoping, I've actually figured out a way to get around having to go into work for that. I might have to go one more time, but yeah. And the other, you just saw a flash of it, the other big announcement this week, of course, is that in addition to economic incentives, for example, $3,000 cash payment to low-income households, coupons to stimulate the economy, and then for some reason they've decided that should be in tourism. Now it doesn't seem like a great idea to be promoting tourism, but in tourism and Japanese Wagyu beef, not any beef, Wagyu beef. They figured out a way to basically turn the economic stimulus into a bribe package for rural constituencies, which is a classic geography-based, voting system. They also promised, Prime Minister Abe promised to save the country by sending 2 masks to every household in Japan. Now, of course, if you are a bachelor living the life on your own, of course you can go crazy like Shinzo himself did in this photo that I'm sure is accurate. Yeah, this is basically the way the internet reacted to the announcement that he was sending 2 masks to every household. This is irrespective of the number of people in the household. If you're 1 person, you get 2 masks. If you're like 4 people, I don't know, you have to figure out how to jam both the faces into it, or maybe take turns as you breathe, like covering your mouth. Who knows? No one can really figure it out. But the internet reaction was something mixed, shall we say. It was like this. Contensai, good to see you, long time no see. Eric Timmer, good to see you, by the way. Also, lots of people pinging at me. The J-Vlog, Japan is so behind the remote work tech. Yes, it is. Some are, some aren't, but Hanko is easy to fake, 100 yen shop. Well, yes and no. Depends on your name, but yeah. Tech art too. Are they creating digital stamps? Yeah, it's easy to do a digital stamp. You just take a scan of your actual stamp and just put it on the PDF. So long as you're responsible for making sure that it's only used properly. But yeah, you can do that. Quinn Rankid, what do Westerners with travelers checks do to validate them in Japan? You know what? I haven't had travelers checks in Japan since 1995. I think when I did them, it was a matter of showing a passport. And I think it was signature. By the way, you can use signature, by the way, and they expect Westerners to use signatures. So yes. And yes, indeed, Andrea Morboy, 2 masks. So that's a creative use for it. But apparently we're getting meat coupons and 2 masks, and that's going to take us through the impending apocalypse that people are talking about. So yes, we're all well prepared. I don't know where the beef coupons comes and travel tourism. Are you kidding me? We're going to get to that in a minute. I've got more to say about that. But in any case, one thing that's surprising, I've been talking to some YouTubers, and of course now spending more time at home, a lot of people are creating more podcasts, which is a great thing. However, at the same time, perhaps a reflection of where and how people listen to podcasts. I don't think people listen to podcasts at work. I think they probably listen, well, they shouldn't. I mean, maybe some people do, but I think a lot of people, butter coupons, yes, amen. I would love butter, but they got to have butter first. This is the problem. They have butter ration tickets, pretty much the way that things are in Japan, because we live under a Soviet-style distribution of butter, as we've talked about. I got distracted. Coming back, if you have, while a lot of people are making podcasts, and apparently the number of Patreon registrations has skyrocketed, the number of people doing podcasts has increased, because people are not really commuting. People are spending all of their time at home. It's a little bit like, if you're a YouTuber, you'll know this, during 4th of July weekend or Christmas or Thanksgiving, not one will watch your video. It's kind of funny. You'll think, oh, everybody's got free time, they're going to be watching my video. No, it's worst views. Everybody misses everything. They only watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts in their routine, which will involve doing it on their commute or whatever. So there's this paradox at the moment. Everybody is actually, right now, Big Camera is selling out of these web cameras. By the way, this is a new webcam, because I've got 2 computers here, one work, one home. So everybody's been buying pretty awesome equipment, like Big Camera. The big electronics chains have been sold out of Logitech, Microsoft cameras. The Yeti mics have been selling out. There's like a month-long waiting list for them on online shopping sites. So I've been, and hell, I've taken the opportunity myself. But everybody's been doing this because the telework, you have to have a lot of online meetings. And it's kind of funny, I think, with all these people having these now upgraded great work setups, that I guess after all of this, they might well get into doing this sort of a thing, because they've got all the equipment for it now. I take pride in always having the best quality video and sound. Whenever I do teleconferences, I get people commenting, which is the goal. But yeah, it's kind of funny. While everybody has the kit and now everybody's making content, very few people are watching content, and I guess that's the danger of the current situation from that perspective. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we get more creators going out there making more content as a result. So yes, a dairy, yes, Mr. Quarterchat, please send me, Andrea, send me a dairy package. I would appreciate that. What else we got? Yeah, just another thing that I've been doing with the shutdown thing and with working from home each day. Having that hour saved on the commute, it does mean I can more comfortably be at home the whole time. And I've been working, I've started like gaming. I went running. I overdid, I think I mentioned this the other week. I overdid it on my 3rd run. I totally messed up my Achilles. I was like out lying down for 3 days. I can walk around without too much pain now, but I still go up the park to play soccer with my son, and after a few minutes it gets sore. So I'm not quite back to running, which is a shame, but it does make you mindful of healthy routines. I've been kind of careful about what I've been eating. I've been trying to get my weight down, which has been working. And I also went and I've been tracking sleep. I got a sensor that you can put under the mattress and track, how well you've been sleeping, how long, and how soundly, and it's actually quite cool. I've got the Withings watch, the Withings scale, and it gives you a score for how good your night's sleep was. And I was having terrible. I'd sleep less than 4 hours a night some nights, generally before. So now I've got a goal of trying to get a green light of having had a good night's sleep, both by duration and by soundness. And I've been doing pretty well. I've been kind of trying to get my score going, and it's kind of cool doing that and improving that thing, which I was not doing very, very well. So yes, indeed, perk tendon down there can be a real, indeed, to deal with. It can be. I was foolish. I wasn't fit. I went running too hard. I did 3 days in a row, even though it was already tight. I didn't, I was asking for it, and it happened. Unfortunately, I didn't pull a hammy. I pulled an Achilles, which, if you look it up, is actually worse. When real proper athletes tear an Achilles, it can take months, and it can take surgery to fix. It wasn't that bad for me. It was kind of, it was extremely painful for a few days, and it was iced and elevated. Now it's a question of making sure it gets better. I'm obviously not going to run on it still for, it looks like it's going to take a few weeks. It's not a quick heal, but I can at least walk around comfortably on it now. But this is the thing as well, now that you're at home and you're trying to create a new routine and be healthy, you can do things that your body's not really ready for. So yeah, I'm trying to be sensible. I guess when I get back into running, it will be very slow and on very flat courses. Part of it was as well, I wasn't fit and I was trying to run up a really steep hill, which puts extra stress on the Achilles. That's clearly what did it. So yeah, what app is that? Father of Man 25 is asking, what app is the app that I'm flipping at? This is called Flipboard that I'm showing the slides on. The app that I was running with was Strava. But yes, all of that. The lack of butter and calcium, you bet, indeed. And Andrew, you play netball, and indeed very smart to stretch. And I stretched like crazy before doing Muay Thai. I just stopped doing sort of running for a long time, and I was just stupid. I just thought I'd just go out and take it easy. And of course I don't take it easy. I'm an idiot. I run too fast. Well, I don't run fast, but I run fast for myself. So yeah, the sleep app, it's all within HealthMate. HealthMate. I think it's the app that was the Withings app that I got acquired by Nokia, became the Nokia app, and then they went back to being Withings again. But it's really good. In fact, oh yeah, I guess I can't really show it here, but I don't know if I can show it also. I get awesome graphs off it anyway, and it's quite motivating. I track my weight, I track my sleep, I track my steps each day, and it all gets integrated, and it's quite motivating. It's really good. So yeah, Germany is testing 17 times more than Japan. We've talked about this before in previous weeks. Japan is not testing people unless they're already presenting serious cases. They don't want to fill up the hospitals. Germany, on the other hand, is testing everybody, so that is a big difference. And yeah, Japan's probably going to switch to testing more people. It's partly that they haven't had so many test kits to give, and they've been kind of building up a repository to deal with if there is an increase, just to make sure that they can be prepared for it. This is the thing. Japan is kind of lucky that it's had the opportunities to see what's happening in New York, what's been happening in Italy and China, in France and Spain. And they're doing their best to prepare for it by taking the lessons from what they're seeing, including getting a lot of ventilators ready, getting a lot of hospital beds secured, getting overflow beds so that they can move people as they get better into hotels, or beds in hotels, basically out of hospitals, to keep hospital space ready for serious cases. So they're kind of setting up. But again, it is scary when you look at what's been happening in Europe and New York in particular. If Tokyo at the moment is on a curve that's heading in that direction, and if it gets into that, yeah, there's a concern at how well they'll cope, although they do have more time to prepare. Germany, though, and others, countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Germany seems to be doing the same thing. Really aggressively. They're not waiting and holding back and preparing. They're going straight out, doing a lot of tests and doing a lot of hands-on control, and they seem to be having some success. So, that is the thing. More Hanko talk. There's a big feature in Nikkei, which is kind of recognizing that Hankos are actually a significant problem for companies that are trying to have proper work from home, and that they're unnecessary, and the initiative is being pushed by the government to try to get rid of them. So yeah. Kang and Koda's Japan are only testing through 3,800 a day out of 130 million. 120 million a day, but that's right, that's the number of kits that they have. They are increasing the testing capacity, including developing kits that will work faster and can test more people, so they're building that up, but yes, indeed. Yeah, one of the, so the governors, of course, Japan has 47 prefectures, just like America has 50 states, and they're kind of like states. They're not full-on states like quasi-countries like in Australia and America, but they do have their own governors, they do have their own local laws. For example, Hokkaido, a territory, was able to declare a state of emergency on its own. I don't know why Tokyo hasn't declared its own kind of prefectural state of emergency, but of course the prefectures, they have their own police forces. They're not quite as independent as full-on states, but they're pretty much effectively, they're like states with governors. The governor there of Aichi, looking very grim there, apparently went on TV and helpfully informed everybody that the thing about COVID-19 is that you only get better after you pass it on to somebody else. So there you have it from the governor of Aichi, which is where Nagoya is. It is the ring. We're dealing with Sadako in the form of a virus. I don't know if he's confused or he just really digs 80s, what's it, 80s? It's probably 90s. This is horror, Japanese horror. But apparently that's how the virus works. This man is in charge of the prefecture with, effectively, if you take Yokohama and Tokyo all as one thing and Osaka as another thing, the number 3 metropolitan area. So Victor, good luck with that guy. However, he wasn't the only idiot. There's actually this one. Will the picture show up? There was an even better one of the four governors saying crazy things. The Tokyo governor kept saying overshoot, which no one could understand. There is the guy saying that you only get better from COVID-19. Oh, I just realized it. I've got to do it this way. You'll only get better from COVID-19 after you pass it on to somebody else. Down the bottom, we have the Kobe governor when Osaka said that they were worried about people in Osaka. So Osaka was worried about people in Hyogo Prefecture, where Kobe is, suddenly increasing the cases in Osaka. They said, well, that goes both ways. Screw Osaka. And the governor of Ishikawa, my favorite one, so he basically, Ishikawa Prefecture on the west coast of Japan, the governor said, for all of the people in Tokyo who do not show symptoms of COVID-19 and are feeling stressed out for being locked down, we would like you to relax by coming and becoming tourists in Ishikawa Prefecture. We only want asymptomatic people. So he basically started a tourist campaign. The governor of Ishikawa Prefecture, which I would love to go to, it's a lovely prefecture, by the way, started a tourist campaign promoting tourism from people in Tokyo, so long as they're not showing. Apparently he wasn't aware that you can be asymptomatic and pass on COVID-19. Ishikawa hardly has any cases right now, although he's doing his best to increase the number by the sounds of it. The people of his prefecture completely freaked out when they heard the governor promoting a tourist campaign targeting people from Tokyo. So yes, indeed, you get all kinds of governors, of course, when you open it up for anybody to be able to do. Another thing, I'm in the Hotel California, I think from April 3rd, so it's already happening now. If I leave Japan, I'm not allowed back in until they say, even a permanent resident like myself, basically if you're not a Japanese citizen, you're not going to be allowed into the country anymore. Japan is on full lockdown. We were in full sakoku. So that is the thing that is happening. Of course, not just Japan. A lot of countries are doing the same thing. I wouldn't, well, again, it's yet to see. Tokyo is heading for scary kind of territory, but I do. It's a good medical system here. I've got a good job that I can do, and I can work remotely without having to go out. So I'm glad that I'm here. New Zealand actually is a pretty good place to be as well. Things seem a little less organized in Australia. I wouldn't want to be in America or Europe at all, so I'm glad that I'm here. I'm very happy to be a permanent resident here, but that is a thing. So right now, you're basically, if you're here, you stay here, but there's no coming back if you leave. One thing that's been going on all this week is the governor of Tokyo has been constantly she's been saying that she wants the central government to declare formally a state of emergency under the new emergency law, which gives special powers to prefectural governors to be able to take extra actions, more than they would have been able to take before, to basically enforce a lockdown if it becomes necessary. Now that said, what the governor can actually do, particularly in the case of Tokyo, it seems like probably, given the jump in numbers this weekend, we thought it might happen last weekend, but there was snow and the weather was terrible and it didn't happen. There wasn't the jump in cases that was feared, but it has happened this weekend, so it seems almost certain that the next couple of days, the government's also signaled that they're getting ready to announce this. So she basically highlighted what would happen if the central government declares a state of emergency. What happens is the central government declares a state of emergency, and then the prefectural governors can decide what measures to take. And basically, what would happen in the case of Tokyo was that we'll all be asked to stay at home. Everyone will be asked to stay at home. Now, there's not going to be like countries where there'll be permits to go out, at least not that well clearly yet. There's also no cases like where there'll be fines or punishments or people being arrested for going out, but there will be enhanced requesting for people to stay at home, including to businesses to allow people to stay at home. So companies are going to have to figure out, and there are a lot of companies still making people go into work where it's not necessary, including like for Hankos and stuff like that. So, for example, the first thing is forcing people to stay at home is really going to really challenge a lot of businesses to see how they can cope with that. The second thing is that she is going to ask for the closure of public facilities and event organizers to suspend their use of venues. This means specifically things like concerts, nightclubs, large gathering type of events like the K1 event, for example. Again, the order will be to close. The government is preparing some compensation for different businesses that will suffer from being shut down. However, they are not going to cover off sex trade from that. There's a large legal sex trade in Japan. It's run by gangsters, used for money laundering. The government's not going to subsidize them, but they are going to subsidize other businesses that will suffer economic interruption from shutting down. But they want people to basically, when they say public facilities, it's not just government run, but also things like movie theaters, pachinko, karaoke. Actually pachinko is not included either, probably for the same reasons as the sex trade places, which is odd. But Yes. So they're going to be first. They're going to say to people that you have to stay at home with no penalties. Second, they're going to shut down a lot of businesses or tell businesses that they have to shut down, again with no direct penalties. So enforcement, there's a bit of a question, but again, Japan's a country with pretty high voluntary cooperation. And the third thing is that she said that they'll be making requests for resources, possibly from the national government, including like things like extra police. And extra, civil services, could be a hospital, could be doctors and whatnot. They also will have powers to be able to commandeer any facilities that have beds, for example, to enhance hospital capacity. So what they're looking at right now is things like using the Olympic Village, which obviously isn't going to be used for a year, but it's all these dormitories full of beds, as well as hotels. And some hotel chains have already started voluntarily contributing beds for their serious cases that require isolation but don't require round-the-clock medical care. So they're preparing that as well. She's been on the news every day. She's been asking for these extra sort of central powers to be activated for her to use. By the way, thank you, Raz Al Ghul. Appreciate it. Yes, so we are waiting for that, and it's probably going to happen soon. She could have just declared a state of emergency on her own, like in Hokkaido, they just declared it basically like a natural disaster state of emergency, and I think they could already have done that. But she specifically wants the powers under the national law that's been passed. The central government kept saying last week that it wasn't quite at a state of emergency declaration stage. A lot of people are asking. I'll talk about this in more detail on Radri's show tomorrow night. A lot of people are sort of asking why the government doesn't just lock down now like everywhere else. And again, why this law doesn't have any real teeth to it, why there are no penalty provisions. I think it's important to remember, I don't know all the reasons for this, but the idea, the allergy to authoritarianism. Remember, Japan basically had a bunch of military coups, and basically the military sort of got its way into controlling the Japanese government. It was still democratically elected, but it was really taken over by various radical military factions in the 1930s that took Japan into World War II and wouldn't let Japan surrender when the war was lost, like for a long time before they actually got around to surrendering. When these authoritarian fascist sort of military factions really took over the Japanese government during World War II, while obviously people in China, Taiwan and Korea, and everywhere under Japanese rule suffered, but particularly the people that were under colonial rule prior to World War II also suffered quite a lot from suppression from the Japanese government. People don't realize people in Japan suffered as well, particularly the left wing, labor movements, were basically singled out by the Gestapo equivalent, the Kempeitai, the secret police, They rounded up political liberals, sort of labor organizers, left-wing people from all over the country, and they were killed and put in concentration camps and really suppressed, as well as regions. There's a real thing about Japan of not trusting centralized control, and all the power was taken away from the regional governments and it was concentrated in Tokyo. And with that power, they forced everybody into war, which ruined the entire country. So you've got a lot of people in cities like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Osaka, Kyoto, that really resent the impact not just of the political repression that happened under authoritarianism in World War II, but also the way that they suffered directly because of it. So because of all of this, when Kobe had the Kobe earthquake in 1995, the governor, I think it was the mayor of Kobe or it was the governor of Hyogo, one of the two, I think it was actually the mayor of Kobe. The central government offered to send Japanese self-defense forces to go and help. There were fires all over the city. There were only 1 or 2 roads in and out of the city. Kobe is like hemmed in by mountains. There's only like one road that connects it with Osaka. And it was like blocked by landslips. So there was a problem that the city was on fire and people were dying in the fires. For 72 hours, no help got into Kobe. The gas was left turned on, and it was generating, apart from the fact that you had all these collapsed homes and buildings and so on, you also had these terrible fires that started raging and actually killed far more people than the earthquake. And there was no fire, no civil rescue for 72 hours, and this is why tens of thousands of people died in that earthquake. The central government at that time tried to send in the self-defense forces, and the mayor refused. The mayor said that they couldn't tolerate the idea of ever allowing quasi-military forces into their city, within Japan during peacetime. The memory still of authoritarian rule was such that they basically were willing to allow tens of thousands of people to die. When it became clear what had actually happened in that time where there was no access, I mean, again, the military could have flown in and started to help, rescue and recovery. But that was the degree of apathy, antipathy to the idea of authoritarian measures, including sending military for rescue purposes. The manual since that time, the lessons, and there are many lessons. I mean, Kobe was such a huge mess up in terms of the response to it, and it informed how well the response was relatively to the tsunami that we had a few years ago. And the complete lack of hesitation by governors to accept help from the self-defense forces now. However, it kind of underpins where Japan is. It's not easy to pass a law that grants, totalitarian, authoritarian powers to the government, even in times of emergency in Japan, because there's a real sensitivity to it still. I mean, the left wing in Japan, and a lot of regional governments that still hate Tokyo, they all vote for the Communist Party out of total spite for what happened, and this is still sort of continuing. So when people ask why the law doesn't have any penalties or any sort of strong enforcement mechanisms to force people to stay at home and arrest them if they're out in the streets without a permit, well, Japan's kind of had that before and it didn't work out very well, and there's a really strong aversion to it. So, plus, and it's a great thing about the job, about living here, is that, the society is pretty cooperative. Like with the smoking, it takes a long time, but it gets done. And with a lot of other things, people spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, and it might not be the best way to do things, but at the end of the day, the compliance rates, are very high when people agree what they're supposed to do. So this is kind of why Japan has these kind of quasi-request-based measures, and even with the emergency law coming up, there'll be a lot of extra measures taken. I'm pretty sure that the compliance rate will be high. Of course, there'll always be a percentage in the population of dicks who will think if you don't make me do it, I'm not going to do it. We'll have to see what happens. Check out too, did the US troops help in those national disasters? Yes, they did. They certainly helped in Tohoku. They helped by Operation Tomodachi. They played a big part. There are bases up there. They played a high profile and welcome part in helping coordinate with Japanese self-defense forces and civil rescue and so on. So yeah, absolutely, they helped that. So yes, thank you, ASMR Japan. I got out the call the other night. Where is that? Here. I figured out a pretty good recording setup. If I had more time, I'm already up on time, so I'm not going to do it tonight. But I figured out a pretty good setup to do a kind of Marc Ribier type creating loops. I've still got to get a bit smoother at it, but I can do some beats and then put on some bass lines and some riffs, and a bit like with the Korg, so that was pretty cool. So I can show you that. It is on the Tokyo Digital Crew. I'll tweet it when I'm doing it, so if you follow me on Twitter, if you like the music portion of the show, I've got a bit of time and I'm actually liking the chance to get better at using this and using GarageBand on iOS, and so yes, please check that out. You can now monetize content on COVID-19 on YouTube. They stopped that for a while, but now that's back to normal. I understand why YouTube stopped it. There's a lot of, particularly in the beginning. Right now there's a thing in the UK about 5G causing it. I mean, just ridiculous stuff, you know, given all the anti-vaxxer content. If they get a vaccination for this, I really hope the anti-vaxxers stick to their principles. You know, of course there's a lot of craziness, and it did make sense to lock it down. I don't care about the monetization aspect of it, but thank you for the people who contributed tonight. Yeah, it's good to know anyway that that's back to relative normal. Right now, as I was saying before, in anticipation of an increase in critical cases and cases needing urgent care, they're trying to clear out the patients who need to be hospitalized but don't require round-the-clock attention, so they are trying to secure hotels, including voluntary cooperation from Appaman Hotels and a few other hotel chains. So that's good to see in Tokyo. This came up in again in Nikkei the other day. Companies can no longer expect lifetime loyalty from workers. I read that and just thought, wow, what a Nikkei, looking at it from the employer's perspective. I think the social contract on lifetime employment was broken by the employers a long time ago. When the contract employment law was passed, when was it, 2003? And the government said at the time, and the Keidonen said at the time, it was only going to be used for about like 3 to 5% of jobs as like a buffer to allow flexibility, and that they would still protect the old lifetime employment system. No, what happened was like, 40% of people in Japan now are employed. If you're a new grad trying to get a job now, more than half the jobs in Japan are on 1-year renewable contracts under the contract employment law. So they got rid of it as soon as they could, and now the minister who brought it in, Heizo Takenaka, he admitted as much that he intends the entire employment system to switch to being based on that. So all that's happened, it's not that people have become less loyal, they've just adapted to companies being less loyal to employees. And now they join companies and they say, I want to stay here for 5 years and then I want to get a better job than your stupid job, bozo. It's good for the economy that people are moving around. It's always been a bad thing. And frankly, a lot of the companies that have been enjoying the benefits of lifetime employment, including being able to haze and bully their employees and underpay them and mistreat them, now they're accountable. So it's a good thing. So I read that and I kind of thought, well, yes, that is true, but it's their fault, and actually it's a great thing. It's good that the labor force here is becoming more flexible. There's the thing on Appaman Hotels. Rob Card, good to see you. Good to see some more names that I don't recognize. Yes, Appaman Hotels, people with light symptoms are now being moved into hotels. I just mentioned that before. A state of emergency, probably pretty imminent. In fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't tomorrow. Final story today, 143 cases confirmed in Tokyo, probably more by this evening. And the other theme on the news today on NHK was talking about how while Japan has a really high number of CAT scan machines and a high number of hospital beds per population, what Japan lacks, Japan's health system is based upon really great proactive medical care, keeping everybody healthy, not reacting to everybody being sick. So the difference between, like, for example, Spain and Japan is that Spain has double the ICU intensive care unit beds that Japan has. Japan doesn't have a lot of accident and emergency care beds. They just have normal beds in hospitals. And there is a concern that if Japan becomes like New York or like Spain, although they have beds and they have hospitals and they're preparing, there's now a keen awareness that what Japan lacks are the facilities that an ICU would have to treat serious cases, which we're seeing obviously in huge numbers in Europe and America. So this is what right now what they're sort of scrambling to prepare in anticipation of larger numbers, and this is the way that things are tonight. I'll zoom in on this. So Tokyo plus 143, 1,000 people. The most affected. Osaka, no new cases, so that's actually good in Osaka, although they have a large total of 387. Kanagawa Prefecture and Chiba are both around Tokyo, so you might as well read them as additional to Tokyo, I think. Plus 27, plus 25. Hyogo still going up. Fukuoka is actually outside of the Tokyo sort of region. Yeah, well, Kobe, Hyogo still not good, but Fukuoka also has had a couple of clusters recently. So if you're in Fukuoka, in Kyushu, stay safe. Obviously, wherever you are, stay safe. That is all the topics for tonight. I talked very fast. We are 6 minutes over. I did not have time for music. I'm going to go have a shower and then go to sleep and work tomorrow. But it's good to see you all. Please, everybody, of course, take good care. Stay safe. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, if you like the show, like if you liked. And I'm, of course, I'm keeping up. I'm trying to curate and be careful to post useful information with my opinions of them on Twitter throughout the week. That's what I make up the content for the show from. And yeah, remember, you can follow me on Twitter anytime if you want to get in touch. I'm here. Would be good if I could do a show with Victor with ASMR Japan. Yeah, I should be able to do that in the next wee while. I'll be doing a live show with Radri, who seems to have fallen asleep. I have that impact on some people. I'm doing a show with him tomorrow, so subscribe to him, and remember, I'll tweet about that when we're about to do it, probably same time tomorrow night. And yeah, stay safe, take care, be well. See you next week. Better Call Saul. Cannot wait. Love that show so much. Finished watching Ozark 2 days ago. That was also very, very good. Limitic, good to see you. Stay safe there in Morocco. Take care, everybody. And have a good night. Boom. Peace. Boom. End stream over here. See you later.